here's our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight, coming to you live on CGTN from Beijing. I'm Tian Wei. Governance indeed makes a difference, something political parties leaders around the world keep in mind when making policy. With growing global uncertainties and skepticism, many wonder what makes a good political party. They say their mission is to work for the happiness of the people, hear people's concerns, and truly represent their welfare. Earlier, I asked this question at a roundtable with high-level political party officials from various countries: Serbia, Egypt, Cyprus, and Cambodia, namely from different continents: Asia, Africa, and Europe. They counted the ways on how they are setting the agenda to improve governance and what lessons were learned from and experiences to be shared with China. Let's listen in. What a pleasure. We have people from all over the world coming over here. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I want to have your immediate response to what you heard earlier, the stories coming from China.
Thank you very much for hosting this event, and we're really happy, if I may speak on behalf of my colleagues and colleagues from Southeastern Europe. We're really happy to be in the beautiful Yangtze province, and we're very impressed by the results that we have seen, because it is not very often that you see that in a matter of only a couple of decades you achieve results that in our part of the world we needed hundreds of years to achieve. And I congratulate the people who have done this. The fact that poverty alleviation has been so rapid, industrialization coming from not having any industry at all to producing modern airliners, cars, and virtual goggles that we had the opportunity to try out outside. It is really amazing.
What about for you, Mr. Al-Roki, coming from Egypt?
For us, we came here, to change idea and to change experience, but mainly we came here to China because it's China. Why it's China? It's the biggest economy of the world. It's by result, a number, and fact. It is the biggest or the second economy of the world. So we have to learn. We have to learn from an amazing experience, which by meaning of how can you put socialism with private sector, keeping in the same time your way of life as Chinese without change. It's not easy. It's not easy to make 1,400,000 people be productive and be a power in the economy. It's not easy. So we came here to exchange, but to learn also.
Mr. Ricky, you want to say something about your reactions to what you have seen here, and how do you think this conversation we have is likely to make parties think how to make it really relevant today?
I am particularly touched to see the presentation from the farmers, the prosperity and the success story of each of them. And we see that with prosperity of the farmers, of the people, we are embracing our nature, embracing the birds, embracing the lakes and the surrounding environment. And just to make, with this, it makes me immediately think of our farmers back home in Cambodia. At the moment, our farmers back home in Cambodia also enjoy the prosperity, the prosperity of our economy. But all this prosperity only happened with political stability and peace. And we need to realize that political stability and peace is the foundation of the prosperity.
Tell us about how your party has been cooperating with, let's just say, from China, the Chinese Communist Party. What do you think could be some of the most important areas that you can work on together or inspire each other?
Well, the Serbian Progressive Party is the largest political party in Southeastern Europe with 700,000 members, and we have some principles defined by our President Aleksandar Vučić, one of them being to maintain a sovereign and independent domestic and foreign policy and non-interference in internal affairs of sovereign states. So being 150 times smaller than China, we really appreciate the equal treatment that we are getting here in China, not just in terms of politics, no political requests, no pressures, no demands, but also equal opportunities. And in fact, the first Chinese bridge in Europe was constructed in Serbia. With the help of Chinese government, railways and roads are being constructed, and we have really excellent cooperation on one hand. On the other hand, we have some similar experiences. We know what it means to be under unfair and under unjust sanctions. We've been subject of colored revolutions, and this is why we strongly support China's right to independently choose its own path, to choose a political system that is adapted to the needs of the Chinese people. And we also strongly support the global vision, which is much necessary for tackling a situation which is really unprecedented at the global level. We have global challenges that can only be addressed through cooperation. And this is why President Xi Jinping's idea on creation of a shared community for a shared future of mankind is so important.
What about for you, Mr. Aroki, from Egypt's perspective and your party as well?
Yeah, well, my party have a very unique experience. Our party is just established 5 years ago, but the unique is it established as a youth party, just a youth party. In the beginning, supporting our president, Mr. Fattah Sisi, during his first election. So this is the case of our party just for youth. Now we have 600 quarters in all Egypt. Now we have make a medical care in the village to the farmer, even to the animal of the farmer. It's very important in Egypt. We make a competition for football or soccer. It's very good for the youth, but the way it was, we make it in every village in Egypt in the same time by the name of our party. And that's one of the ways to get the youth to the party, or to get the youth, convince them to go to the politics. We are learning here, and we are getting our experience from the Chinese Communist Party, because it's the biggest party, and also he have rules in every village and every place. It's not easy. It's the biggest party. So we have to get this experience to extend our experience.
So how to be the biggest party, and how to be the biggest political party in the biggest population, 1.4 billion in the world. I guess that's an interesting topic. We're also going to likely to tackle a bit later in our discussion. What about for you from Cyprus?
It is true that during the last 50 years, China's leadership has generated a substantial amount of growth and prosperity for the benefit of its people. Back in my country, Democratic Rally, my party, which now is the ruling party, has performed important reforms that have improved the lives of our people. To mention only two, the government of Cyprus has fully implemented a very generous and effective welfare system which helps tens of thousands of families to improve their standards of living. A second important reform was the establishment of a universal health system which provides health services to all people.
Obviously, you all have governing capabilities in your mind. This is exactly what has been advocated on the 4th session of the 19th Chinese Communist Party Congress. And obviously, all political parties these days are focusing on this issue. But really, how to improve the governing capabilities? That is the key here, to make the public really feel that their ideas are coming into the policy, and also the parties are really for the people.
We've heard here by the party secretary from Yangtze province about people being in focus of the policy of the Communist Party. So in our party, we also try to communicate with the people. And after sharing experiences with the people from the Communist Party of China, we decided to introduce mandatory quotas for our party officials to speak to the people a certain number of days, 200 years a day at least. Every senior official has a duty to receive and speak to ordinary citizens in order to make the party closer to the people. Because, in fact, all political parties should be in the service of the citizens. And, of course, fight against corruption, organized crime, as set also forth here in China by the General Secretary of the Communist Party. It is similar in Serbia. It is one of our priorities, one of the priorities of Mr. Alexander Vučić. And in fact, it has brought us greater investments. As a result of better governance, we have managed to attract 56% of direct foreign investments in the Balkan region last year, because people want to come where you have a stable and peaceful environment and where everything is secure.
Mr. Al-Roki, I know in Egypt you have very same lessons and experiences.
Yeah, I think, first of all, for any party want peace success, and he has to be near the people, I mean in their places. And then we have to talk, and that's what we are trying to do in Egypt, to each people individual. What I mean, you cannot talk to the youth same way that you are talking with a normal or big age. You have to talk to each age, which the language he will listen and he can convince. The goal also that you are convincing the people with a big project you are doing. I mean, in our country now, we are under our president, Mr. Sisi, we are building a new modern Egypt. We are suffering because we have to change our currency, free our currency, which increasing the price 120%. It was a big decision and very correct decision our president take it, because it has been late for 40 years. You have to let the people believe that this suffer will end in a good result for them. If you didn't do that, you cannot convince people. But also, when there is a suffer, the people have to see that all the people are suffering. Then, if there is a result, they have to feel that all the result is getting to all the people, not few of people and the others not.
It's not only about what you do, it's also about how you communicate with the people. It's extremely important. Mr. Ricky, from you.
Thank you so much.
Governance capabilities of political parties.
Yes. Cambodia, under the leadership of our Prime Minister Hun Sen and Cambodian People Party, we enjoy, for the past 20 years, enjoy a GDP growth of 7% annually. And over the past 20 years, we have reduced poverty from 50% to 10%. So with that prosperity, we planned to be a middle-income country by 2030 and a developed nation by 2050. With that, we need to do further reform, and good governance is at the core of our reform. And with good governance, we need accountability, and accountable to the people who elect us, accountable to the people we serve for. So our government brought up many initiatives to open dialogue and to hear directly what people have to say. So public forum is our basic initiative with the people. In fact, our Prime Minister cares so much for the people that the people can message him directly. And his office will...
How many messages is he receiving every day?
Yes. Well, Facebook
I really wonder.
Facebook is the biggest platform in Cambodia, and our Prime Minister takes suggestions and ideas on Facebook. He himself personally sometimes will reply to the message, but his office will sure take note and respond to the people's need.
I can see a lot on your agenda when it comes to development plans.
Yes.
Development is really the key word here. Mr. Aroki, from you, you just talk about how you have to be connected with the very grassroots and let the people of very grassroots feel the development is with them every day, right? You told me earlier about some specific examples, but how do you see, China's experiences, which is also enjoying a large rural areas like your country? And how do you think that there can be some interactions between the two?
We learn from China something, even some example. I remember that there is an example when I was young still. I remember that if you have a poor guy, don't give him a fish and teach him how to catch the fish. This is something in the life. And also, I'll tell you something. I read something about the President of China, Sir CGB, and he says something which I believe that if you are making a system for the village, want to know if that system is correct or not, go to the farmer and see the faces, if they are laughing or crying. This is very important, that after you make the policy, after you applying the policy of the people, you have to check if your policy in the correct way or not. I came to China beginning 25 years ago for my business. And I came to China maybe every 6 months. So I saw in myself, in my age, how a country change every 6 months. You will not see it all over the world.
Interesting. Mr. Ricky, I want to come back to you also about that, because on that point, Cambodia, being China's neighbor, knows very well about how to respect each other. And as a result of the latest development, how to have win-win in this process for all parties.
Thank you. I think in the regional partnership as well as global partnership, we need to respect each other, respect each other's sovereignty, respect each other's independence, and help each other to build peace and help each other to build prosperity. So with that regard, our Chinese counterpart, especially the Communist Party of China, has been working very closely with Cambodian People's Party to build peace, to build prosperity, and respecting our rights and our rights for self-determination. And that is important, that each of us has our own identity, our own rights for self-determination. And I think we should work closer, build a deeper friendship and relationship for the prosperity of our people.
We earlier have touched on this topic repeatedly, but before we go, I do want to have the thoughts and inspirations and insights from every one of you about exactly how are we going to achieve this, to work for the happiness of the people.
Well, I believe that we should, as it has been said here, I heard the wise thought, no one should be left behind. So no one should really be excluded from the process of development, prosperity, and, building up institutions and the economy. This includes the youth, this includes the workers, it includes all generations. And in that sense, this means also internally, but internationally, sharing links, making, by the way, the Belt and Road Initiative one of the key engines of global development. It really makes a difference in this world. The initiative One Belt, One Road offers opportunities for underdeveloped, lesser developed, developing, and even highly developed countries to cooperate on an equal basis to increase and improve their ability to exchange goods.
I see. Connectivity, extremely important. To you?
Well,
final words.
Yeah, sharing idea and sharing experience with 50 countries under this CBC, it's fantastic for us, and also really we are learning from each other everything.
Okay, and Mr. Giorgio.
We are very happy to hear before that the government of China is going to implement a complete and sufficient welfare system which will cover the whole of populations, and especially those living in rural areas and have less opportunities. It would be a major success for any government able to offer a sufficient welfare program to its people. We are very happy to announce that the government of Cyprus has been able to do that during the last 5 years or so.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Mr. Ricky.
Thank you. To make our people happier, we need to be more accountable to their needs, be more responsive, and therefore we need to do a better reform in our good governance. And thank you, our development partners, for helping us realize our goals and our prosperity. And again, self-respect and respect for self-determination we would work for that. Yeah, thank you.
Learn to improve governing capabilities while at the same time cooperation is the key for everyone. Let's put our hands together for these gentlemen. Thank you for their stories and also their experiences. Advice as well.
In this episode of Travelogue, we head to Hunan Province, to the place that inspired the mystical scenes of floating mountains in James Cameron's Avatar. Join me in Zhangjiajie for the most breathtaking, jaw-dropping, heart-stopping landscapes I've ever seen.
The world is changing fast, taking all our lives with it. But we can change it too, by seeking answers to problems through discussions and debates. On World Insight, I ask direct questions to real people in the know, seek genuine answers, but respect diverse perspectives. Our live global debates tackle the most critical issues head-on. World Insight with Tian Wei go beyond the headlines. To World Insight, I'm Tian Wei. The program is coming to you live from Beijing. We now turn to the presidential race in the United States, where billionaire Michael Bloomberg is throwing his hat into the crowded ring to be the Trump challenger for the year 2020. Will the 77-year-old media mogul be able to change the game? Before we ask our panelists, all from the U.S., let's take a look at this 11th richest man in the world.
Today, I'm glad to announce that I am running for president to defeat Donald Trump.
He might be late to the party, but as the 9th richest man in America, Michael Bloomberg's entry into the crowded Democrat field made headlines on Sunday. And Mr. Bloomberg puts his money where his mouth is when it comes to campaign spending.
Dropping more than $37 million on a TV ad campaign, the largest in the 2020 campaign cycle so far.
The owner of Bloomberg News is reportedly worth more than $50 billion, making Donald Trump look like a poor billionaire in comparison.
There is nobody I'd rather run against than little Michael, that I can tell you.
Taking a reversely similar path as Trump, Bloomberg was once a Republican, then independent, before switching back to being a Democrat. As the leading centrist candidate Joe Biden is perceived by some to be lacking momentum, Bloomberg hopes to be the alternative to Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, who are themselves millionaires but have made abolishing billionaires a cornerstone of their pitches. Bloomberg's 12 years as mayor of the Big Apple left behind a mixed legacy. Rebuilding the city post 9/11 won him praises, but controversies also abound, from trying to ban large sodas to extending a third term. Recently, the former mayor shocked many by admitting that his support for the infamous stop and frisk policy was a mistake. Beyond New York City, Bloomberg struggles for national recognition. The maverick billionaire does plan to skip early primary contests and instead focuses on the so-called Super Tuesday contests and beyond. Analysts say no one has ever won this way, but then none of them was as rich as Michael Bloomberg.
For the latest on the Democratic Party presidential race, we are joined in Washington by Morgan Muchnick, who is the founder of the M2 Group, a government and public affairs firm. Also in Washington, Basima El-Hussein, political analyst at the Truman National Security Project and former legislative advisor in the Obama administration. Last but not least, joining us in New York, we have Christopher Hahn, who is the host of the Aggressive at the Revolver Apple podcast, if I understand all right. Let's go to our discussion. Mr. Muchnick, tell me about whether the 11th richest man in the world will be able to, quote-unquote, buy the election as being accused by the other candidates already from the same party.
Sure. So first, it's a great try with the name. It is Muchnick, like too much of something, and then your friend Nick. Then you'll never forget it.
Okay.
My kids have to go through that all the time.
Never too much politics. So Mr. Muchnick, go ahead and explain.
Fair enough, yes. Sure. So in my opinion, I do not think he will be successful, although I must say he provides a very interesting touch point to Democratic voters that are not to the far left of the political party where it is today, but really are not a fan of Joe Biden's. So in my opinion, what he does is he plays a very interesting role as it relates to the quote-unquote moderates. So Biden, I can never say his name right, Buttigieg, the gentleman, the former mayor, and now Bloomberg are the sort of perceived moderates. Boot edge, right?
Okay.
These folks will compete with each other for attention, and it's possible that maybe these three folks fighting with each other could then help folks on the more left of the party. So there's a chance that could play itself out.
But you didn't answer my question. The question really is whether, quote unquote, the 11th richest man in the world, that label is going to help him or drag him actually backward compared to the other candidates. Mr. Muchnick, if you could very briefly.
Sure, yes. No, I don't think it would be a positive from the point of view of the Democratic Party, but I think President Trump has done a really good job appealing to the sort of populism and the sort of middle class, lower middle class vote, even though he is extremely wealthy as well. So I think today you can sort of massage the message, but there's no question that his wealth will be a net negative throughout his attempts to get the nomination on the Democratic Party.
A lot of people look at the health, rather the wealth issue, maybe the health issue too, because they are all in their 70s, interestingly. Ms. El-Hussein, if I could pronounce your family name right, what do you make of that? I mean, the 11th richest man in the world and the 259th richest man in the world, meaning Mr. Bloomberg and Mr. Trump, they are head-on-head trying to figure each other out, believing as the largest opponent toward one another. Is that really going to be the case?
I think that it really depends on how Michael Bloomberg continues to message his campaign. So as we saw in the 2016 election, Donald Trump was very effective at marketing himself as a businessman and thereby messaging that he could create jobs, that he was the best person to run the economy and create jobs from the bottom up. And so Michael Bloomberg, of course, has the ability to neutralize that argument of being a savvy businessman from Donald Trump. But at the same time, he also alienates large parts of both Democrats, Republicans, and moderates because, for example, he's very strong on gun control, which I personally agree with him and appreciate his stances on that. But that is, of course, going to alienate some potential Republican swing voters. And then, of course, he's has much more friendly policies towards banks and larger financial institutions. And so I don't see how he could appeal to the large bases that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have established.
Mr. Han, what do you make of that? A combination of different attitudes on social issues and pro, quote-unquote, big business.
Well, I think he's got his work cut out for him, but knowing the team he has around them, they must see some path for him getting the nomination. And having all the money you could possibly need for a campaign surely helps. I agree with what your reporter said. This strategy of skipping the first 4 primary states is not one that has ever proved successful, but we've never had a person who's been able to throw $1 billion into the race, the same as you or I would put down $20 to buy a round of drinks after work. So it's a very interesting dichotomy that's going to happen. He does have some issues to make up. There are people who are going to question stop and frisk, maybe some of his attitudes towards big business, but you cannot argue with success. Bloomberg was a fantastic mayor of New York City.
Yeah.
He did a lot of great things in this city. He did a lot of progressive things in this city. But, of course, the stop and frisk issue is one that's out there. He did make an apology for that. I don't know if that's good enough. But we'll see. We'll see if that's the issue that drives people to the polls in the Democratic primary. I think Mike's got an interesting case to make. I do see that he does hurt Buttigieg and Biden somewhat if he catches on. And we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. I love this time of year.
It's, well, it seems that everybody loves this time of year, but also concerned about this time of the year. Mr. Han, you said about $1 billion. May I correct? I think the latest news I read put out by American news media is about $170 million Mr. Bloomberg is willing to put into the presidential campaign so far, at least so far. But you know, money is one issue, but what is important, Mr. Al-Hussein, now, it's about whether a rich man will have the right image to be a political candidate for the Democratic Party, particularly right now, when you see other candidates, for example, those that are on the far left, almost talking about what the Republican Party accused of even communism in a way. So what do you think, and against capitalism at least, so how do you see this interesting combination of sharp contrasts?
You are right that the primary candidates thus far in the Democratic election are extremely different in their viewpoints and what they offer the American people. And I think from that, this is one of the most interesting elections we will see and will really indicate which direction the country is swinging. Will the base of the Democratic Party have the sway, or will it be who can win moderate votes and even some swing votes from Republicans? That's not going to be the same kind of candidate. At the same time, I don't think that I think a lot of people in the United States are turned off right now with President Trump and just, you know, this concept of just people being so wealthy and running for office. And I don't think that it helps Michael Bloomberg at all that he's even wealthier than Donald Trump. I mean, of course it helps on a tactical stance and that he can purchase more ads and he can catch up, you know, quickly with the candidates that have already laid out a lot of groundwork. But in terms of his image overall, I mean, he's going to appeal to more Republicans, but is he going to appeal to enough Democrats to even win the primary?
Really
I don't see that happening.
It really depends on one thing also, whether the Democrats are running their campaign or the voters, at least for the party, are looking at, the important issue of whether to defeat Donald Trump or not. At least Mr. Bloomberg and Mr. Muchnick is running with that kind of slogan to defeat Donald Trump because he said that this is going to be a national threat. But, what do you think about that fact? Is Donald Trump going to bring Mr. Bloomberg more winning votes, rather? Or this is not likely to echo with all the voters with the party?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So I had this discussion with a gentleman that actually was in the car ride service here, and we discussed this exact issue, whether this group of Democrats is the right group to challenge an extremely non-traditional president, and a president that has also engendered entire Republican movements against him, the sort of quote-unquote never-Trumpers, which are sort of based here in D.C. I think Democrats haven't, this is my personal opinion, I believe Democrats haven't done a very good job in arranging a group of candidates to do that, to capitalize upon some of that ill will, at least within his own party, against the sitting president. So I think the Democratic Party moved, in my opinion, far too left. And they're going to put up a candidate, probably, that's going to be pretty far to the left of the mainstream of the United States electorate. And I think if someone like a Biden or a Bloomberg made it through, they might be able to capture a lot of that frustration with the president. But the problem is, like one of your other guests did say, there's a large percentage of the electorate on the within the Democratic Party that is pretty far left to these, quote, centrist Democrats that are running. They're going to have a really hard time. I think a lot of those people, they certainly wouldn't vote for Trump, but they probably just wouldn't vote. I see potentially, if you have a more moderate Democrat catching the trajectory and winning the nomination, a lot of the left would probably just not vote because they see it as or vote for a third party because they see it as one-half dozen the other.
What is the central issue?
There's a lot bigger range.
Yeah, we heard you.
No.
What is the central issue, Mr. Han? Is it about to defeat Donald Trump, the central issue for the Democratic Party right now, or other policy issues that are crucial? What do you think?
The central issue to the Democratic Party right now is defeating Donald Trump. Full stop. That's it. I totally disagree with Muchnick here, saying that he thinks that Democrats that are far to the left wouldn't vote for a centrist Democrat. Absolutely wrong, Mr. Muchnick. Absolutely wrong. The Democrats want to defeat Donald Trump. They're going to do everything they can to defeat Donald Trump, and whoever the Democratic nominee is at the end of this process will get the full support of liberals, Democrats, people on the left, and centrists in this country that see Donald Trump as an existential threat to the republic.
I see.
This will happen. They will consolidate. As for Bloomberg, look, we're talking about Bloomberg because he's one of the richest men in the world. Money is the mother's milk of politics. Deval Patrick got in almost the same day as Bloomberg. Nobody's talking about Deval Patrick, even though he was the governor of the great state of Massachusetts and has just as much right to run for president as Mike Bloomberg does. His money will make a difference in this race. It will define him. Money defines him. That's why the other candidates are attacking him.
Another thing is important, that is whether track record count or rhetorics only count. Ms. El-Hussein, I want to ask you that very crucial question.
Well, I think that one of the most potentially challenging and controversial issues with Michael Bloomberg is, as you said, at one point he was a registered Republican, a registered Independent, and now a registered Democrat. And so he is literally the epitome of a flip-flopper, not just on one issue, but in terms of his entire political ideology. And so for that, I think you know, you can argue that maybe he has cross appeal, but I think that also raises a lot of questions and can raise a lot of mistrust within the Democratic Party. I do agree that the most important thing is to beat Donald Trump, and I think whoever ends up winning the primary, that there will be a lot of energy and mobilization to get out the vote. And when it comes to the issues, I mean, the bottom line is, like, for example, the last presidential Democratic primary debate we had predominantly focused on health care. And we have people arguing Medicare for all or some version of Medicare for some as an option, but then still being able to buy into the general market. And the fact of the matter is there isn't really that much of a choice there. I mean, whether an Elizabeth Warren type candidate would win or a Pete Buttigieg type candidate would win. The only thing that would have any kind of chance of getting through the United States Congress is a more moderate agenda anyway. So whether or not a far left person gets elected doesn't really affect, I think, the main policy issues that will be accomplished in Washington.
Okay, another important question, a lot of important questions really here. Mr. Han, why? The candidates are getting ever older. We see Mr. Trump, the current president, in his 70s. We see also not only Mr. Bloomberg, but others, Elizabeth Warren, and also some of the others in the candidates in the Democratic Party, in their 70s. What's going on with the politics? People are getting older, more mature to handle the problem, but they also have challenges as a result of the age. Mr. Han.
I for one, would rather have seen somebody from Gen X become the next president of the United States. I mean, we have Mr. Trump, who's part of the silent generation, and we have a couple of boomers who are trying to hold on here. I do see that as a problem for the Democrats. I think putting somebody up younger, fresher, with new ideas and new experiences and a new perspective on the way this world should be run, to run against Donald Trump, who is significantly older, would be a nice nice way to make a differentiate between the two. So I am concerned that the Democratic frontrunners are older, with the exception of Pete Buttigieg, who's a millennial, which is the generation behind me. You know, quite frankly, as a Gen Xer, I would have liked to seen us get at least 2 presidents. We only had Obama, but I guess we'll always have Nirvana.
Wow. You know, we're running out of time. Thank you so much for the 3 of you helping us to understand different opinions coming from your country. After all, of course, it's your country and your people making the judgment eventually. Thank you so much, Morgan Muchnick, Basima El-Hussein, last but not least, Christopher Han. Really appreciate it. Thank you. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine. Check out our YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook accounts as well. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for more insights across China and around the world. Good night.